Good morning, guys. It's Cheyenne here, and we're doing our morning vocal warm-up reading practice. Got my little hot beverage here to throat the coat in case it gets a little stuck. But we're gonna keep it smooth like butter and flow like a stream. All right, let's go. There were no secrets, no mystical formulas behind these successes. I operated in much of the same manner as did almost all wildcatters, with one important exception. In those days, the science of petroleum geology had not yet gained very wide acceptance in the oil fields. Many oil men sneered openly at the idea that some damned bookworm could help them find oil. At best, the vast majority of oilmen were skeptical about geology as a practical science and put little stock in geologists' reports. I was among the few who believed in geology. I studied the subject avidly at every opportunity and applied what I learned to my operations. The independent operator had to possess a certain amount of basic knowledge and skill. He also needed reliable, loyal, and experienced men on his exploration and drilling crews. But beyond these things, I believe the most important factor that determined whether a wildcatter would succeed or fail, whether he would bring in a producing well or wind up with a dry hole, was just plain luck. There were some who did not consider it luck, among them T.N. Barnsdall, one of the great Oklahoma oil pioneers. Multi-millionaire Barnsdall often expounded his favorite theory about what he thought made the difference. It's not luck, he maintained stoutly. A man either has a nose for oil or he doesn't. If he does, he smells the stuff even when it's 3,000 feet down. Perhaps, but I rather doubt it myself. Personally, I was never able to sniff out the presence of subterranean oil pools. Nor do I recall that I ever tingled with an oil dowser's extrasensory response while tramping across a potential drilling site. I still think my early successes were due mainly to pure luck. However, lest there be those who imagine wildcatters had little to do but wait for the wheel of fortune to spin and reap their profits. Let me say that the oil business was never an easy one. It has always entailed work, hard work, and it has always been fraught with innumerable financial pitfalls, especially in the early days. Wells someone blew up and profits and often capital were devoured with appalling speed by costly efforts to extinguish the resulting fires. Dry holes, equipment failures, and breakdowns at crucial periods, squabbles, and litigations over leases and right-of-way. These were a few of the myriad problems and setbacks which frequently drained the independent operators' financial resources down to a point well below the danger mark. In addition, all of us who operated independently often found ourselves facing heavy competition and opposition from major oil firms. Some of these huge companies did not always abide by Marquis of Queensberry rules when they engaged in legal or financial infighting to smother an independent who appeared to be growing too big or too fast. Wildcatters developed traits and techniques which enabled them to stay in business and to do more than merely hold their own against the petroleum industry's behemoths. We became flexible, adaptable, and versatile, adept at improvisation and innovation, if for no other reason than because we had to in order to survive. For example, for example, the big companies employed vast numbers of specialists and consultants, administrative personnel, and office workers, housing them in large and expensive offices. We, the independents, found our experts among the hard-bitten veteran oil field workers who formed our prospecting and drilling crews, or we relied on our own judgment and experience to solve our problems as they arose. We did our own administrative and paperwork, keeping both to a minimum. As for our offices, these, more often than not, traveled with us in the mud-splotched automobiles we drove from one drilling site to another. As I have said, I was lucky, very lucky. I made many profitable deals and brought in several producing wells in the months after I struck oil in the Nancy Taylor allotment site. The Getty Oil Company prospered. I was named one of the company's directors and elected its secretary. But this did not mean I exchanged my work clothes for a business suit. Notwithstanding my heady new titles, my work was still in the oil fields and on the drilling rigs. My role in the company's affairs remained the same as it had been. I bought and sold oil leases and prospected and drilled for oil. As the Getty Oil Company's wealth increased, so did my own in proportion to my 30% share in the firm. And I was also embarked on profitable ventures on my own account. All these things kept me very, very busy. Too busy to pay more than cursory attention to how much money I was actually making. Then, one day, I stopped and took detailed stock of my financial situation. I suddenly realized that I had gone a very long way towards accomplishing what I'd set out to do in September 1914. I had built the foundations of a business of my own in the American oil industry. I was not quite 24, but I had become a successful independent oil operator, and I had made my first $1 million. I was a millionaire. All right, guys, that is my morning vocal reading warm-up practice. Thanks for watching. Have a fantastic day, guys. Peace.